microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, days and the fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to have just these two sources whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to go.
And we are live on UCY.TV radio. This is the Ochelli Effect. I am your host, Chuck Ochelli. So, interesting week, I would say, at the very, very least. We have the lander on the comet. We have the ramping up of the anticipation over the situation in Ferguson, the Michael Brown shooting, etc., etc. Man, what a world. Anyway, thanks for tuning in tonight, especially those at ucy.tv/TOE. I really appreciate that. That's the website you can go to and find some of the archives and all that good stuff. Now, we always try and bring you the best people that we can. I always try and bring you more interesting people, that I don't hear on a lot of other shows. And, hey, Jack Blood does shows with this lady called Blood and Guts every now and then. I think it's about once a month. I think that's still going. But the thing is, you catch those every once in a while. You definitely hear a lot of great stuff. And, to my mind and to the minds of many others out there, this lady in particular is one of the legendary kind of figures in alternative media. She's been around a long time. Really, really, really a privilege to have her on the show tonight. And you know what? One of the guests that somehow or other I don't get a lot of hate generated from. So it's interesting, I'll tell you. I got a lot of static from Leslie Carol Botha last week because we talked about women's issues in a way that sounded, apparently I'm supposed to apologize for being a man and surrender my genitals according to the vile messages I was getting. But, what am I going to do? The lady directly identifies herself as a hormone goddess and blah, blah, blah. And I got more hate mail from Leslie Carol Botha than I did from even the guy from the Church of Satan. So I don't know what to say except that it seems like women's hormonal issues freak people out more than the devil. Anyway, and I knew Meria would appreciate that. Oh, good evening, Meria. I have missed you. Oh, boy, have I missed you.
Hi, Charles. I can't help snickering.
It's okay. I knew you would. I knew you'd appreciate that, too.
Well, this whole man-woman thing, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, that started the whole weirdness, with, how different men and women are. And I got to tell you, the guy that wrote that book is, if ever I've seen somebody that's as feminine a man as could be, it's him. So I wouldn't take any of that stuff to the bank anytime soon. I think women and men are more similar than people want to believe.
Yeah, and you know what's odd is that really see, now I disagree with you a little bit. I think that there are definitely separate roles that have sort of been ingrained in us as genders. And I think that women have a great many powers that men simply do not have, first of all, and vice versa. It doesn't mean that all women are incapable of doing certain things or anything like that. I don't agree with any of that nonsense. A woman that sets her mind to doing something that is generally seen as a masculine trade or whatever else, I do believe in most cases they can pull it off. But the thing is that I think that when it comes to certain skill sets, they typically do reside with one gender or the other, and that just seems to be the way of things. However, in recent decades, I've seen that get really convoluted in a social way, and I think in a biochemical way.
Well, it's the key word you said was rolls, and I always tell people, if you want rolls, go to a bakery.
I love you, Meria. I'm telling you.
It's just another program, okay? People haven't got any idea that we're programmed from the minute we're born and stamped with a social security number. And they tell you what's expected of a woman, tell you what's expected of a man, what a husband should be, what a wife should be, and everybody falls into line, falls into those roles, which I think is the reason so many relationships break up, because everybody starts acting like, Leave It to Beaver's parents. You forget to be who you are, which attracted your partner, and you become the wife or the husband. And I specifically remember telling my last husband, who asked you to take on this role? What happened to the guy I was dating? He got married and all of a sudden he was a father, he was a husband, he was the breadwinner. And I got to tell you, it wasn't attractive.
and that's really what it comes down to, is that, we all are individuals after all. But I do think there is a difference. You can't say.
Of course there's a difference, but the bottom line is we really all want the same thing. We have the same emotional needs, physical desires, etc. We're not from two separate planets. We're supposed to complement each other.
Yep, no, this is true. And sometimes it is rather difficult, though, to sort that out, because there is a different sort of mindset that I have been witness to anyway. I mean, I'm always told, because I made this point on the show, I said, it seems to me as though just about every woman I meet is some level of insane.
Isn't everybody?
But isn't everybody? That's true. But you see, I can't communicate with this insanity sometimes, and it's probably my fault because I'm stuck in my own, a sort of groove regarding how to communicate. So it probably is my fault. But I've also been told that, that's what I select. So,
well, think of how much happier we would all be if we took the words fault, guilt, and blame out of our vocabulary.
See, and this is another reason why I love you, because you right down to its most basic elements, and you just tell it like it is.
Well,
Man.
I mean, that's just the truth of it. Years ago, I had a wonderful teacher. His name was Sun Bear, and he said, if you take the words guilt and blame out of your vocabulary, you can never feel them again. And I tested it, and now I've tested it for 30 years, and you know what? It works. Life should be very simple, but people make it very complicated because they just don't admit that they're stuck in a program.
Well, right, and I mean, and this is why I try and entertain so many different ideas on my show, and I try and give people a platform to speak about their views, because even if they're wrong, they may actually get you thinking in a different direction and convince you of something other than what you were already programmed to receive. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, Chuck, for a fact, I'm old enough to be your mother. Okay, So after all these years and so many relationships and counseling so many people in relationships, I wrote a relationship book on everything I know about relationships. Guess what? It's less than 60 pages. Everybody that reads it loves it, okay? It cuts to the chase. I mean, everybody makes things more complicated than it needs to be.
Oh, can we buy that book somewhere, Meria?
Yeah, I have it for sale on my website. They can just go to, Maria's Books on my website, and that's where I list all the books I've written. But I can tell you this, male, female, young, old, gay, straight, teenagers, everybody loves the book. I thought for sure I'd get flack on it, and I didn't get any flack on it.
Well, because again, you have this really interesting and really singular ability. See, that's the thing. You really do have a singular ability to boil things right down to their essence and say, look, here's what it actually is. You get all the crap out of the way right away, Maria.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody makes everything so complicated. You know, when I was in high school, I was studying bookkeeping, and that's a whole lot of math. And I remember my teacher gave us an assignment to take home. I take it home, and I'm trying to do it the way he explained, which must have had about 50 different steps. And I had a eureka moment, and I developed a shortcut. When I went back to school the next day, I said to him, listen, this is crazy the way you're teaching it to us. I says, look, I worked out the shortcut last night. He immediately poo-pooed it, and then he did the math on it. And I can tell you this, the following year I was stopped in the hallways by other students of his, and they asked if I was Maria Rubino. And I said, yes, why? And they said, because Mr. So-and-so is teaching us your shortcuts.
Yeah.
So, since I was a kid, I always looked for the shortcut. Who has time to be bothered, going through all this pain and strife when, you can just get it done quickly?
Boy, yeah, you'd be put into the non-dunce cap wearing timeout nowadays with the Common Core math, wouldn't you?
They would have put me on about 12 different psychotropic drugs just to shut me down in school.
Well, they would have tried anyway.
They could have tried. Listen, I would have been expelled, except I was the highest grades in the school, so they couldn't do anything else with me but keep me there.
Oh boy, it's funny. It reminds me of what I went through in school because, see, I was in one of these more urban type schools, which I think you were too, right? When you were younger, anyway, when you were in high school, grade school. And what they did at that time when I was in school was they went around and they tried to get rid of the undesirables. When they got to a certain age, they would give you special dispensation to be able to quit school. And they'd give you a clipboard where you could go around and you get so many school counselors to sign it. And you didn't even need your parents' permission to get out. And this was the thing they dangled in front of those of us that were kind of undesirable. They wanted to do that to me, but unfortunately, with the exception of the 1 year that I wasn't in school most of the time, I was on the honor roll, so they couldn't do it.
Exactly. I actually told one of my teachers that I was the only student that justified her salary, and it was no thanks to her. So I wasn't exactly their favorite kid, but what could they do with me? I had a pass, I had a round-trip ticket to the dean's office every day, and I was like, I don't care. But I never fit in, never wanted to, still don't want to. And one thing I've realized is, when I was in kindergarten, way back when, we're talking maybe 1955 in Brooklyn in a school that was 100 years old when I was in it, I looked at the kids in my class and I already knew they were all idiots. And when I saw them all in high school, they were just older idiots. And when I look at my peers today, people in their 60s who have, a lot of them truthfully have destroyed this country, they're still idiots. So I guess I've always had that nose to sniff out the BS out there.
Well, that's the thing. They are consistent, and so are you. So it looks kind of the same.
Consistent thorn in the side of everybody. I don't think there's a group I haven't insulted in my life or haven't threatened me, but I'm still here.
Oh, I love it. I'll tell you, and like I said, you're one of those people that's an inspiration to me because it's just, I've always had that attitude. I've always never really had a desire to fit in anywhere. It's kind of funny, though. I guess I attract what it is, what it is I deserve in a way because the only responses I get, the only feedback I'm getting anymore is hostility from my listeners. It's almost like... And I think it's hysterical because here's the thing: as I read these things, I discovered by just sort of putting together the pieces that they had to have listened to the entire show. They had to have listened to other entire shows in order to make these comments that they're making, because they're accurately citing stuff. And I'm saying to myself, that's hysterical. The people that really hate my guts listen to me longer than anybody who calls themselves my friend.
No, because you must be hitting a nerve. Okay, and I don't like to say, people don't know what they're talking about. They just don't know enough. So, no matter what, if they're coming at you with hostility or whatever, they're still listening. So at least they have a pulse. It's when you don't hear from anybody that you kind of got to say, is anybody out there? Anybody listening?
Oh yeah, that's true. Sometimes you do feel like, and that's the funny thing. Like I did 2 hours on Thursday with a guy all about free energy, alternative energy, the history of stuff like Tesla, the history of like the Egyptians and all that kind of stuff. And this guy's a brilliant scientist, and it was received kind of well, but there was like no feedback afterwards. There was nothing. And it was like, well, gee, I did something everybody agreed with there, but other shows I do, I get like this weird backlash of stuff, and things that I don't even think would drive people up a wall. So it's too funny to me.
Well, you never know what's going to trip somebody's triggers. I have a few topics that I know, especially if I post to social media, that the hate mob is coming out. And I specifically posted there to piss them off, because at least if they're pissed off, they're thinking.
Exactly. And along those lines, that's why I love the fact that you're actually an administrator on the Ochelli Effect Facebook page.
Yeah, and I take it easy on your page.
I know you do, and it's kind of funny because, like, again, there is the only place that I see feedback, come to me sometimes, and it's weird because they'll go and send me a message to my personal page when they read something on that page. And usually the only feedback is when they're angry, about something or other, or they think, we said something wrong, or what's the matter with you, because you're embracing like liberalism, and what's wrong with you. And
everything has to have a label. Everything. Any original thought, you have to either be a liberal or you have to be an anarchist. How about with just thinking human beings?
Really, I mean, I'm sick of the red and the blue. I think it's all purple, and I don't care if it's a donkey or an elephant. Either way, they're not exactly the most cooperative animals out there. I don't know why they ended up being the.
I think they represent the parties perfectly. A stubborn ass and a dumb elephant.
Oh, especially when you watch
fat pig elephants that have sucked every drop of wealth out of everybody in this country. What I don't get is so many people still think it's a two-party system.
I love the way that John Kennedy explained it when he said that that the elephants follow each other, trunk holding tail going through the circus. Yeah, it was perfect,
Right. I like to say, not my circus, not my clowns.
And you know what? Speaking of clowns, you do the one of the shows that you do sometimes is Send in the Clowns with Dave McGowan.
Oh, yeah, he's always a rip. That guy is always a rip. Actually, Dave will be on this Wednesday. And I have to tell you, it's the days. Dave's been on my show since I started, since 2000. Okay, and he's very particular whose shows he goes on. He'll always ask me first whether he should go on this person's show or that one, because he doesn't like anybody busting his chops. But he is hilarious, and the best shows we have is when he says to me, Maria, I got nothing. And then we go off, and I mean, it's just so much fun, and those are the best shows we do.
Right, and I never script your appearances. This is your third time on my show. And I did post your guest list on the event page for Facebook, and I made a little joke there. I don't know if you saw it. I said, I'm not on this list, but I have been on her show, too.
Oh, I don't. That list, listen, I stopped updating that list in 2010. All right, okay. It just got so huge. I mean, there was no way. So the only way, I mean, if somebody goes to my site, you put your name in my search engine, you'll pick up the shows we did.
Right.
So just because somebody's not on the list doesn't mean they haven't been on my show. I mean, after 15 years, I'm like, holy shit, who am I going to have on the show? Maybe I should start the whole roster all over again. But I don't even remember half the people that have been on my show.
Right, and I have some constant reoccurring guests. I mean, I did mention the Blood and Guts thing with Jack Blood, because I'm friendly with him as well, and he was...
Jack's fabulous. Jack and I have been friends for 17 years now. He used to produce my regular radio show.
Right. When Jack gets into talking about when he was in terrestrial radio, that was one of the things he's talking about. Actually, is producing you.
Oh, he was fabulous. He was fabulous, and anybody that's lucky enough to have Jack on their roster should get down and kiss his feet, because he is a true professional. Not like, and I hate to say it, not like a lot of people out there who just said, let me wake up today and start a podcast. I don't know what I'm talking about, but let me get out there.
Oh, right, and he's been on my show once, which which is funny, but he's actually, and I know some of the people have been listening to me for a while. He's actually responsible for me being on the radio anyway.
I know, he was the first one that told me about you.
And so love Jack, and he's simulcast here on UCY, which originates with RBN though nowadays. And I got to get back in touch with him, actually, because we got some things to talk about.
I have some great co-hosts. It's almost like I have my own radio station, because I've got 6 co-hosts that kind of come in and out every month or every other month. And that's been the case for years.
Right. David Icke.
Yeah, I got David Icke. David will be back next month. He's still recuperating from Wembley. I've got Jim Fetzer. I've got Jim McCanny. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but what a scientist he is. I call our show the True Science Hour. He'll be back on this week. Richard Grove. I have Joe Anthony, who's a great astrologer. I've got this great Italian guy with an English accent, Michael Riccia, who comes in every other month with a spiritual show, and his shows rock. So I've got my own variety show. And I'm not Carol Burnett.
Right, plus a lot of interesting. If you just go to her front page right now, you could see stuff like an interview with William Rodriguez. Let's see, Professor Stephen Jones. Geez, it's kind of endless, really. Ed Haslam.
People.
Yeah, Ed Haslam, Cynthia McKinney. Cynthia McKinney is somebody that I do admire as well. For her ability. The first
person I actually believed in and voted for president. The difference between her and Obama was she's really a black American, and she really was born here. And she's a real woman, unlike Hillary, where the thought's still out on that one.
Yeah, well, all right, we'll leave that be for a moment, but...
Well, we got another Clinton-Bush election coming up soon.
And I was going to touch on that with you.
Excited. What?
I was going to touch on that with you because I've said it on the air, and yes, I admit this almost as if I'm at an AA meeting and saying that I'm an alcoholic, that the last guy I voted for president was named Clinton. So, oof.
Well, there's a cute poster I put up on Facebook of Stewie from Family Guy, with a gun to his mouth in his high chair saying, "Enough, Clinton Bush." And he's got in 2016, and he's got a gun to his mouth.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Oh, no, I absolutely love that. When people say, well, gee, I was voting for the lesser of two evils and all that kind of stuff.
It's still evil.
How about we stop voting for evil? How about that? Let's give it a shot.
Listen, I've been screaming for people to vote third party, any party except the first two. Because my thought is they're so busy flipping votes from the two parties that they won't even pay attention to try to flip votes from the third, fourth, or fifth party. So you might have a shot.
Yeah, maybe. And the weird thing is, I also noted that I did register recently to vote again, but I didn't vote in this last election because I'm in the wonderful state where we had Tom Tillis and Kay Hagan, which was, one of those sort of featured swing states in the country, because I'm sitting in North Carolina. I'm from Jersey, but living in North Carolina at the moment, so I'm a stranger in a strange land, but yeah. And
I think you might have a chance of actually having your vote count if it's a small local election. Mm-hmm. But anything else, come on, your vote doesn't matter. If it did, it would be illegal. And you saw it with Citizens United. They bought the vote this year.
Oh, absolutely. And I've said it several times that you just look at my state, which is not where I'm living, but it is where I'm living. But I'm saying my state where I'm currently at. The thing is, they spent $175 or $190 million. $190 million in order to obtain a Senate seat, which of course only pays the holder of that seat $175,000 a year. So if you do the math real quick. What do you come up with?
They're not doing it for the salary. Are you kidding? They're doing it for the lobbyists who are going to pay them off like nobody's business.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because realistically...
They're all criminals. They're criminals. The only difference between a politician and a gangster is the gangster dresses better.
Well, now, see, I argue with that, too. You might actually get a little bit of value out of bribing the gangster, though. You know? because your store might not burn down if you pay off the right guy. With these people, everything burns eventually. It's just a question of whose turn it is when their corporate masters inform them. So,
well, the problem is they've burnt this country to the ground.
Yeah, it's already been done in a figurative sense and a financial sense, and it's one of those situations where I really am starting to feel sad, especially because, the later in life child that I've had, I'm looking at him and I'm practically wanting to apologize to him every day,
Oh, your son, by the way, is so cute. I love the pictures you put up of him. That kid looks like his soul is about 1 million years old. He could be Yoda. You should have called him Yoda.
I definitely think he's special, and you could tell there's a different look in his eyes. I think part of that is of course that we've chosen not to vaccinate him. Okay.
Right. Well, that'll help.
So there's part of it right there.
Imagine taking a perfect baby with a perfect, brand new, healthy immune system and shooting him up with 42 vaccines. What the hell is that about?
Yeah, with preservatives that aren't even actually preservatives, that are just poisons and all kinds of adjuvants. And believe me, we've been over the subject on this show a lot. And it's one of those things that just frightens me to no end that there is an entire generation now being pumped with more and more of this stuff. And I know you're aware of that as well.
Oh yeah, I did a great interview with a young father. His name was Marcus Hines. I don't remember the name of his book, but it's all about vaccines and his kids. And he only came aware of it and then really went nuts and wrote the book after his daughter got vaccinated and was permanently damaged.
And just by the way, I got a message slipped to me. Kim says, thank you, and she loves you too.
Oh, who's Kim?
Kim is of course, Frankie's mom.
Oh, okay. I know so many Kims. I was like, I didn't know if you take calls or whatnot during your show. I forgot.
Oh, no, I do, but usually I wind up talking to you and we never get to them.
Oh, well, tell her thank you and tell her she's got a beautiful little boy there and that, I look at him and all I see is wisdom. I mean, he looks so old for a newborn baby.
Yeah, so my lovely wife there, she definitely is. She's listening, so she heard you.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I mean, it kills me to see this stuff happen. But of course, we're being attacked from all sides, and you know what? I knew that there was something that I wanted to get to, and it just came to my mind because I'm one of those people that actually has the ADD a little bit, and didn't get it chemically induced. But I mean, have you noticed? I know you have to keep your eye a little bit on the mainstream news, just like I do, as distasteful as that may be sometimes. But the reality is, I mean, are you watching how they're amping up this situation regarding the coming announcement out of Ferguson?
Oh, absolutely. I already could predict what's going to happen and have predicted it. We'll just see if my prediction comes true. Okay.
Well, okay, what do you think? I almost feel as though you're going to say what I think is going to happen too, but let me hear from you first, because I've never asked you about this anywhere, so I'm curious. What do you think is going to occur here?
What's going to occur is going to fit in with all the other irregularities about this bullshit grand jury that allowed Darren Wilson to speak in front of the grand jury for 4.5 hours. If anybody listening to this show has ever had anybody in their family accused of a crime where they had the case go before a grand jury, you are not allowed to be in there. Your attorney is not allowed to be in there. And I don't know of any grand jury that takes 3 months to whether or not just to indict you, let alone see all the evidence in advance and let that cop speak for 4.5 hours to a grand jury. Grand juries are like star chambers. Mm-hmm. So, to me, the fix is already in. Okay? You look at all the crappy stories, how many times the story's changed since it started, which, of course, is an indicator of a false flag. You best be expecting race riots because of this, because there's no way that's not going to happen. You look at the cops loading up for bear, as we used to say in New York. Yep. You got the crazy men who have no balls who are going to show up in their sheets over their heads. Ku Klux Klan wants to fight the blacks there. And it's none of their business. Either they're hiding behind a badge or hiding behind a sheet. But these people are like sitting ducks, and I don't know that they understand what's about to happen to them. This is all scripted. So my feeling is, listen, Charles, I grew up in New York, okay? And I grew up, where in the 60s when we had the race riots, civil riots, et cetera, any crime that ever happened in New York, and I can only speak for New York because that's where I grew up, it was arrest the first black guy and blame it on him. And many guys went to jail for crimes because the cops wanted to close the case. Even if Darren Wilson is innocent, which I doubt, why don't they just offer up that one cop for peace? They've done it to many civilians throughout the years. Why not just offer that cop up and quiet it down? This is going to be another test case like Boston was to shut down a city. This is going to be a test case to see how they can shut down protesters countrywide.
And you know what? The convenient, if they did not want to have a riots break out and civil unrest, which is going to occur here, if anything other than an indictment comes out of that, is this. If they wished to kind of quell it without causing a serious problem, they could let an indictment stand.
Right.
Which would satisfy the crowd.
Should be happening at a trial. All of what's happening in that grand jury should be happening at an open trial, not inside a closed grand jury.
Well, yeah.
So I agree. They should indict him and let it go to trial.
And here's the thing. Even if they've already predetermined that they want to blow the trial, I mean, there's 100 ways to do that on technicalities where they could say that, and I mean, realistically, right, Meria? I mean,
of course.
If they wanted to let him go, they could do it later. And, by throwing out evidence or by turning around and saying that, something was compromised, he wasn't read his rights at the right time, whatever else, wouldn't be a problem. You know?
Look, if this was a one in a blue moon shooting, that would be one thing. This is a regular occurrence for most African Americans in this country. And you have to look at when the rich, white, landowner, Mormon, connected, Cliven Bundy decided to strap on his guns and act like he was, the Lone Ranger. You had a lot of white protesters. They all had guns. The feds stuck their tail between their legs and beat it. Now you look at Ferguson, where you have poor black people that are not armed, and you look at the difference of how the police state crashed down on all of them. And you got to say, what was the difference?
Well, what stung to me right away in both situations is I saw individuals that seemed to come out rather conveniently that were really amping up the trouble in both places.
There's always provocateurs in the crowd. That's the FBI's fingerprint all over them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
it's funny because before you asked me that, actually before we even got on together, I have a great book of quotes, and I like to pull a quote every now and then and stick it on a poster. And this quote that I was picking for my next poster fits perfect. It's a quote by Robert Frost. It says, "A jury consists of 12 persons chosen to decide who has the better lawyer."
Talk about apropos.
I know. I must have been psychically in tune for what was coming up.
That's pretty wild.
Well, but it's the truth if you think about it. I mean, you look at how the rich white people get away with murder, and I'm not just singling them out. It's just a fact. All these corporate bankers and whatnot. It's all about what they can afford to buy their way out. Cops can rape somebody and do, time served in their living room. And there's different sets of laws for them and different sets of laws for the rest of us. And it's really who can afford the better lawyer that's getting off. That's the way it goes.
You know what? I've actually got a couple of callers that want in. You mind taking a couple of calls? Because I think you set something off with what you were saying about Ferguson.
Oh, okay.
So let me see if we can add them in. But this is definitely part of the equation. Let me just indicate to somebody something here, real quick. Sorry, live radio.
I know. I suffered through that for about 5 years, and then I had it.
Yeah, well, hey, yours are all pre-recorded and posted now, right?
Yeah, I got tired of ducking hackers, the FBI, CIA, everybody whacking my show. It's too stressful. So I have to try to duck around all that. Yeah,
I went through a lot of that stuff for a bit. It seemed as though when I struck upon certain topics, suddenly my Skype my internet would go down. I mean, all kinds of fun stuff would happen.
Right.
Just coincidentally, though, Maria.
Oh, yeah, I know Jack got whacked and hacked off the air, and they even shut down his phone this week while he was trying to do a show. So, I mean, you got to learn to roll with the punches.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, Jimmy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Chuck. How are you?
All right, Jimmy. How you been?
No, not too bad, man. It's been a long time since we've talked.
Absolutely. So you had something you wanted to add in about Ferguson?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask your guest, Meria. Is that your name?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, what makes you think that the cop is guilty?
Well, if you look at the cop's history, this is not the first time he's broken the law.
Well, I understand.
And I don't buy the story that boy, first of all, they made up that fake story that he supposedly robbed some box of cigars or something, which he didn't do. He paid for his cigar. I mean, when the story changes that quick, especially in the first day or two, then you know it's a bogus story.
Okay. But you know they did find his blood inside the squad car, right?
That's what they say. But, you know, I also know what they said about the autopsy, and I'm hoping that their attorney, the family's got a great attorney in Leon Crump. I hope he's going to ask for a second autopsy by a private party.
Well, there was quite a few witnesses that stated that he did go inside that cop's car. Now, I'm not saying that he punched him in the face because I saw the video of Wilson going in and out of the squad room, and it didn't look like he had been punched in the face. From somebody that's been punched in the face, I know that it didn't look like he'd been punched in the face.
Right. Well, but you know, what did the kid have? 6 bullets in his back?
I didn't hear that.
I mean, when you look at it,
he got one through the arm, which was probably the one when he was going through the cop's door, right?
Right, okay, but they did have witnesses that said he was shot walking away. Okay, if somebody
breaks... other witnesses that said that he turned around and went back at the cop. You know, he had his hands up.
Like this is my point. It's Boston all over again.
Right, I know. He said, she said, right.
And another, right. And you got to say who's paying off who to say this.
And I'll tell you something else, and I want to add this into the discussion since you guys are talking about the autopsy. The family brings in Michael Baden, which made me want to throw up in my mouth to start with. Okay, because, and I bet you know why, don't you, Maria?
Throw up in my mouth. I call that mama birding.
There you go. Well, I was mama birding when I saw Michael Baden show up. Okay, this guy, you know, the world-renowned cover-up artist, in my opinion, because this guy was, of course, the head of the medical panel for the House Select Committee on Assassinations in the 70s. He has been several times over involved in touting and pushing the official story regarding these events, and immediately, just from my limited knowledge, okay, because I'm not a forensic pathologist, but I did have to spend a little bit of time studying it at one point. The thing is this, I could tear apart half of what he was saying regarding that second autopsy. His public statements were absolutely incomplete and incredulous scientifically. They were completely incomplete. Here's a very simple a test of what the problem was regarding what Baden had to say. And he testified to the grand jury this week also, okay? The thing is, you have to have a recreation. You can't simply know where a bullet went in and out of a body unless you know, A, the position of the shooter, you know exactly where things were laid out. You have to put together a lot of different evidence in order to forensically recreate the thing.
Which should be happening in a trial, not in whether or not he gets indicted.
This is also correct. But the thing is, for Baden to come out and make these statements, and I don't know where he dug up this other guy he had with him, but either way, they were completely incomplete and inflammatory and meant to do nothing but spread a different narrative. And that narrative, in my opinion, was something that's easy to destroy. Now, I'm not even saying that this cop, and I've said this from the beginning, if this kid was standing there with his hands up and he was shot to death, then you know what? I don't care what they do to this guy. They need to deal with this cop. Okay, because we've all seen plenty of police brutality over the past few years. That's for certain.
More than ever.
However, I can't state that I know for a fact what happened there because I wasn't there. I don't have access to all of the forensics, that have been collected here. I don't know for sure if this kid was menacing this cop. This cop was legitimately in fear for his life, or if this kid was simply an innocent victim who had just been killed simply for being black on the wrong street. I don't know.
He was a thug. Okay, now the news tried to play it off like he was getting ready to go to college or whatever. But this kid had a rap sheet that was severely lengthy, and he was a thug. There was no doubt about it. I'm not saying that he deserved to get killed. I didn't finish my statement. I was just going to say I don't think he deserved to get shot to death in the middle of the street. But what I'm saying is, if he went through that cop's door in an attack mode, then I'm not gonna shy away from saying the cop might have been justified in hitting him.
Well, then we'll take it to trial.
Right.
Why all the
regardless
secrecy?
of what's happening, I want to say this about the Brown family, okay? To see their family fighting each other in the street over money, over T-shirts with Michael Brown's likeness or name or whatever, is just ridiculous. And to have seen the riots that went on in Ferguson over a dead kid, breaking into buildings and burning buildings down and destroying public property.
I certainly don't agree with that either.
If any of you think that justifies his killing, you're sadly mistaken.
I certainly don't agree with that either. However, I don't agree with police having to shoot people dead like they do now, but that's their order.
You're not going to get any of that from. When I had my show, I did all kinds of things on police brutality and them shooting dogs and tasing kids, and they're ridiculous. They're way, way out of control.
I know. Now it's shoot to kill. What happened to just winging them like you see on TV? I guess that only happens on TV where they shoot them in the shoulder.
I thought they were all issued tasers.
See, that was my next point. What about the non-lethal?
Less than lethal, yeah. What happened to less than lethal?
I agree. What did happen?
When did everybody become a suspect? Because if you drive down the street, even in this little shithole town that I'm living in now, you drive down the street and the cops eyeball you like you're suspicious of something.
Well, they are taught that we are all the enemy now. In 2005, they changed from protect and serve to becoming law enforcers.
Yeah, they enforce the law, yeah.
So, whether we agree with those laws, and you could fill a library with the laws. I'm sure we're all breaking the law right now talking somehow.
But they're still public servants, period.
Right, but not anymore. They're really just serving the people that they need to protect. People that give them their orders.
And I've been saying this for years and years, too. If everybody stopped paying taxes, we would see just who public servants were, because they would be the ones out of a job.
Well, once their pension fund gets stolen like everyone else, especially look at Detroit, or their paychecks bounce, then they're going to turn on their owners. And I'm just waiting. I want to watch a big bag of popcorn.
once they're thrown under the bus, right?
Well, it'll happen, and they don't understand that they're not any better or better off than we are. Okay, even in my small town, the police budget is ridiculous. It takes up most of our taxes, and there's very little crime here. But when, they're still middle class or less than middle class. But somewhere in their minds, they think they're better than the rest of us because they have that paycheck. When that paycheck's gone, there's going to be hell to pay. And I think that's when the show finally begins.
Yeah. It's getting ready to kick off quicker than any of us can imagine.
I totally agree, and it better happen before the people wake up. You remember, we got 300+ million Americans sleeping right now. But when they finally wake up, they have to lose a little bit more. I guess we haven't lost enough yet. There's going to be hell to pay.
And Jimmy, I'm sure you can agree that the situation has been manipulated to create the situation that is exactly there in Missouri right now.
Absolutely.
This has been orchestrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no, the feds could have come in there and squashed it quick. I said it on your friend's show the other day when I called into them. The one thing they could have done, and Meria kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, is they could have thrown this cop under the bus. And they didn't even really have to throw him under the bus. They could have just played it all out in public like a little movie.
Well,
and
see,
then
that's
once they convicted him. They could have said that they were dragging him off to jail. They could have took him to another state, put him under an assumed ID, and let him live a life.
Well, they didn't even have to convict him. All they had to do was issue an indictment really quickly, act like they went through a trial, and kind of drop it. They could have dropped the ball, and that would have probably...
they could have printed a story that said he committed suicide or something, for Christ's sake, and bust him out of town.
Right, give him a new ID.
Yeah, that's all they got to do. And it would have shut everything up, because now the people in Ferguson, they want blood. They want blood now. If this indictment doesn't go through,
pissed off they're getting.
Well, I'm telling you, if the indictment doesn't go through, there's going to be like City Hall's going to catch on fire, and the fire department's going to catch on fire, and the police department's going to catch on fire. You watch, it's getting ready to go full on. Yeah.
Well, that's self-defeating. You got to look at Mexico.
Oh, absolutely. But there's.
I don't know if you're following the story of what happened in Mexico with those 43 missing students.
Absolutely, that's where I'm getting it from. I mean, there's people that are in Ferguson now that have been behind a lot of these protests in Greece and in France and in Germany and a lot, and they're in Ferguson now, and they're teaching these people, this is what we got to do, this is what we're doing, laying it out, blah, 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 blah.
Well, but the difference was the Mexican people, they took it where it belonged. They went to City Hall, they went to the president's palace and set fires. They hit the right targets. They didn't burn their own laundromat.
And they got the mayor and his wife arrested, and all the truth came out. The truth came out. So there you go.
You look at how the rest of the world is awake and dealing with it. People today know who the controllers are, after so many years.
This isn't Mexico, though, Maria. This isn't Mexico.
I know. Well, it used to be.
When these cats up in Ferguson start going full tilt boogie on everything there is to go, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a bloodbath.
I know, and it's a terrible thing. And I've lived through similar situations when I was growing up in New York. I will tell you, during the race riots in New York, I want to say it was the late 60s, there was a mugging in front of my house. And when the cops came, they interviewed my mother. And they asked my mother to come down to the station and look at a lineup. And even though the cop was African-American, most of the kids they put in the lineup, of course, were African-Americans. We lived in an all-black neighborhood, except for us. And it wasn't bad. I actually liked it better than the people that lived there before. But they actually encouraged my mother to just pick anybody out of that lineup because they wanted that case closed. And my mother stood her ground, and she says, there's no way I'm sending an innocent young man to jail because you want me to pick one of these kids out no matter what. She says, I just can't identify him. But, this was going on in the 60s. The cops did that all the time. But, to me, even if this guy was innocent, put him out there. What's one person versus the whole city? Throughout the country.
I said it on Twitter several weeks ago. The only good cop I've ever seen in my life was Serpico. James Serpico. He's the only one, and he got thrown under the bus. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So when people
all these people are saying, "Oh, there's good cops. There's good cops." If the good cops are out there, why aren't they turning in the bad cops?
Because
if you're not, that's apathy, and that you are guilty by association.
I totally agree, 100%.
High five, girl.
Well, Jimmy, is there anything else you want to add in here? Or
oh, man, I'll drop off.
It's cool, man. Look, thank you for calling in, brother.
Thanks for taking me.
Not a problem. We gotta talk sometime off the air,
All right, brother. You take care.
You too, man.
Bye-bye. Peace, everybody.
Take care. Jimmy's an interesting guy, and definitely, I can see his point of view. Regarding this situation, I still say that regardless of what this kid did, execution was not the proper punishment. So, either way, something wrong occurred here.
Absolutely. Look how many people they've executed. You call the cops because your kid is a schizophrenic and he's missing his medication. They come and shoot him. Call the cops because your kid wants to commit suicide. They come and shoot him. I keep telling people, whatever happens, never call a cop because you're the one that's going to end up dead.
Well, that was funny on a roundtable discussion the other night. Exactly that question came up, and somebody said, "In 30 seconds, how would you solve police brutality, the problem, in this country?" And I said, "Well, the first thing I would do to lessen the problem is to tell people to stop calling the cops for your problems, because this is usually where things, are growing from. This is where the problem actually begins when you bring them into a situation that they don't really belong in, because you're not learning how to handle people as individuals. You're not dealing with your own problems." Keeping your own yard clean, in other words, you know what I mean? If you're not doing that for yourselves, and then you bring in these other individuals who are, armed and have an agenda and militarized at this point. Yeah, and, thank you, mainstream media, for finally using that phrase. But, notice that too, right?
Right. Well, a retired cop, he was a cop, I think he said, for 29 years. He wrote a really good article this week. I don't remember his name. About the danger of our militarized police. He said when he was a cop, it was different. You were protecting and serving. He says, but once you give them military ammo, you give them military training, let's not forget a lot of our police departments, including Ferguson, are going over to Israel for military training with their police. He says once they're militarized, their mindset thinks they're in a war, and that they have done more damage between relations between civilians and police than's been done in the past 20 years.
Absolutely. And of course, the immediate, telltale problems that we saw there in Ferguson. I mean, the new Black Panthers show up. Hello. That's a problem right away. I mean, I don't know what your viewpoint is on them, but the difference between the new Black Panthers and the old Black Panthers, right?
Well, years ago, believe it or not, I interviewed the children of the original Black Panthers on my show. And a lot of them had some pretty fabulous music groups out. But, I did ask them what it was like growing up with their parents and stuff, back in the 60s when, the Black Panthers were, not as militant as I'm sure they are today. But, somebody had to stand up for them. Charles, it was no different than the mafia standing up for Italians in this country years ago. Somebody had to protect their own people.
Well, yeah, and it was especially useful at the time when, Italian immigrants were pretty much ignored, marginalized, treated as less than humans, and that did happen, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Everybody needs to read the book. It's called The Black Hand. Yep. And you really learn, when Italians came to this country, their passports were stamped non-white. So they could only get jobs that black people could get. They were treated worse than the Irish, who were beneath the real Anglos. So it's like if it wasn't for the mafia, those Italians, which is why they built railroads and were dock workers, they were the only jobs they could get. So they needed the protection of their own people, the Mothers and Fathers Italian Association, as we used to call it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And other things, of course, came into play this week. Besides the racially charged incidents out there in Ferguson, you saw the whole thing with the lander on the comet, right?
Yes, I did. And I think that could be big news, but it obviously wasn't as big a news, and emphasis on the word big, as Kim Kardashian's ass being on the TV.
Well, right. I mean, but of course that does have girth to it as well. So we got to give credit where credit's due.
So you got to give credit to Photoshop, because there was a whole lot of cottage cheese missing from that picture.
Nice. Ooh, I'm glad you said that instead of me.
Take the girl out of Brooklyn, can't take the Brooklyn out of the girl.
Wow. And also true. Man, oh man. And you totally threw me off track here.
Well, I put up a poster of her husband, and it said, "Here's a picture of Kim Kardashian's ass."
Nice. Oh my goodness.
I mean, we got Fukushima melting the planet. We're in China syndrome to beat the ban. We have drought. You have a black market for water in California. We have real serious problems. And this is what the media is blasting all over the place. Is this truly the planet of the apes?
And you notice the Ebola crisis virtually disappeared from the radar.
Right after the midterms. How convenient.
Well, and here's the thing. I got a little bit of flack when I said that essentially this is, pretty much a hoax, that this is just nothing like... nothing dissimilar from the swine flu, from
Anthrax,
the avian flu,
SARS.
Well, you got it, SARS, MERS.
The list goes on and on. The list goes on and on. You have a better chance of getting raped by a cop than getting Ebola. Okay, people need to get their perspective. It's funny because I went to the doctor a couple of weeks ago because I had an earache. And the first thing I said to her was, I don't have Ebola. And she looked at me and she cracked up. And I said to her, people don't get 50,000 of us are going to die this year from pneumonia. And everybody's panicking over Ebola. And you know what she said to me, Charles?
What's that?
She said, thank you, thank you, thank you. You have no idea what we're dealing with here when people come in.
Yeah, everybody with a cough thinks they have Ebola all of a sudden, right?
Right. Hey, let's go Ebola tonight.
Oh, wow. And you know what it reminded me of? And everybody thinks I'm a little crazy when I say this, but it really reminded me of the scare that went, that resonated throughout the country at the time we first heard about GRID, which was later, dubbed AIDS. And everybody in the world basically thought that they could get it from, touching a light switch. I mean, you name it.
Right. And still, there are millions of people that die of AIDS every year. Nobody talks about that anymore. It's like yesterday's news.
Yeah, that's all gone. Well, ever since Magic Johnson is the poster boy now, and of course he's got the money to do it. But let's not.
Look, the people that invent the disease invent the cure for their people.
You got it, and isn't that the case? And in that light, we also have to look at how Bill and Melinda Gates immediately decided to dedicate part of their foundation to the actions over there in Africa, et cetera, et cetera. And what happened to those troops that were sent over there to help contain the Ebola problem exactly? I wonder if anybody will be talking about that anytime soon. Oh well,
Right.
Never mind. We have the ISIS crisis to deal with, or ISIL, depending on who you're talking to.
ISIS, ISIL, and it sucks is the way I look at it. It's all fabricated. Okay, there's a company in D.C. in the Ronald Reagan building called ISIS. They're an intel service.
That's right.
Israel's intelligence service is ISIS, Israeli secret intelligence service. Okay. How is it that Israel is treating Hamas victims, ISIS victims in their hospitals? Why is it Israel isn't getting any terrorist attack? They have a car accident and they say that was a terrorist attack.
Well, you have to take care of your employees, Maria.
Right, you got to look after your own.
And and I'll tell you something else, and I haven't seen anybody mention this, and I'm sure you'll have something to say about it. But I mean, you notice that this week we also got treated to the the worldwide exclusive interview of the guy who actually shot Osama bin Laden.
Oh, please.
And
Osama bin Forgotten. That's how I referred to him.
Well, just previous to that, of course, we have the whole controversy about the Navy SEAL who didn't... all that kind of good stuff. I mean, all that fake controversy. The one thing that occurred to me about that, though, Maria, is didn't all those guys get killed at some point on a Chinook helicopter?
Exactly. Dead men tell no tales. And now all of a sudden we have a whole bunch of them saying they shot bin Laden. Well, where's the proof? Where's the photographs? Oh, there aren't any. Okay. Bin Laden was killed. Bin Laden died in December of 2001. Okay. Benazir Bhutto actually talked about his funeral, and then shortly afterwards she took a bullet to the head. Okay. His obituaries were published in all kinds of newspapers through the Arab world when he died. Paul Craig Roberts wrote a fabulous piece on this whole SEALs bin Laden story that was so excellent I read most of it out on my show. Just how it's all BS. Remember, the FBI never wanted bin Laden for 9/11. Ever.
Well, yeah, and the FBI definitely, when they put up a wanted poster, they put up anything that you could be accused of. And if you ever looked at what was up on the website at the time, you'd see that he was accused of, stuff like the coal and the bombings in the African embassies and stuff like that. He was wanted in connection to those acts, but they did not mention the 9/11 attacks, did it?
No, and what other people don't know, so it might be news to some of your listeners, is Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset, and his name in the CIA was Ted OSS Man. Ted Osman. I thought the OSS Man was a nice touch.
Yeah, well, of course, because that would be an homage to the Office of Strategic Services, which was the precursor to the CIA. Thank you very much. And of course, the public history on this is well known. He was part of the Mujahideen, which we backed and funded during the time that the Soviet Union was ostensibly involved in that little country that we have now been involved in longer than Vietnam, called Afghanistan, which coincidentally is a wonderful supplier for heroin.
Gotta keep those drugs going for the CIA and Big Pharma.
Oh yeah, and you know what? I know you're a movie buff too. So here's another thing, and I'm sorry I'm jumping all around, but okay. I love doing this with you because it's just I know where you're gonna go, and it's just a privilege to have you on with me at the same time.
It's like a Mensa test. Let's see how fast we can go from subject to subject.
Well, right. And how does this connect? Well, did you see have you seen the movie Kill the Messenger yet?
Kill the Messenger. I don't know.
Gary Webb.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. This is the Gary Webb story. Now, for those who don't know, this is the guy who was originally publishing the stuff that we have all now turned to and discussed. Mike Rupert is credited with being involved in that as well. Of course, he passed away earlier this year. But the thing is, this is all linking back to the CIA crack cocaine scandal, of course. Highway Ricky Ross and all that kind of good stuff, or Freeway Ricky Ross, I think it was. Sorry, but you know what I'm talking about now,
right? Yeah, but anybody that tells the truth, you're going to be dead before you know it. Let's look at George W., the Idiot King, okay? All of a sudden he wrote a book on homage to his father and how much he loves his father. And all people have to do is read Fortunate Son, and the author of that was murdered, to really understand how much he hated his father and just how abusive his parents were. They groomed him to be a sociopath. But now I guess, because his father, another old person that never seems to die, like David Rockefeller, because I guess they have the money to have the cure for life eternal. Anybody that's going to believe this Bush book is out of their minds. They just need to read Russ Baker's book on the Bush family, or Kitty Kelly's book on the Bush family. And Kitty Kelly, I don't know if you're familiar with her or not. Chuck, but I had her on my show when she wrote her expose on the Bush family, because Barbara Bush called all the TV stations and said, if you put Kitty Kelly on your shows, you'll never get another interview from any member of the Bush family. So I lucked out and got her on my show. And she said that, she always offers $20,000 a reward to anybody that can disprove anything in her book. Nobody did, and nobody sued her either.
Well, I'll tell you something. I know, Maria, that you're not very concerned with the repercussion that would come with not being able to have a Bush family member on your show.
Oh, please, talk about mama birding. I'd be mama birding through the whole thing.
I would have him on, though. I'll tell you that right now. I would have W on. I don't know how long the interview would last. I suspect about 5 minutes. But
when he was president and they post this thing, if you had 1 hour with anybody on Earth, who would it be? It was always put me in a locked room with George W. Bush for 1 hour. That's all I'd ask.
And it is funny, of course, H.W. Bush earlier this year jumping out of an airplane at his age, does speak to, if you have the money, you can have the cures, because, most of us are dying off after we break a hip or something. This guy's jumping out of airplanes, for God's sake.
Well, he just proved that pigs can fly.
Nice. Or at least they can parachute anyway.
Right. I mean, granddaddy pedophile. When I used to see pictures of him with his grandchildren strewn all over his bed and stuff, I feared for his grandchildren. Let's not leave out the Franklin cover-up that happened under his watch in the White House.
Well, yeah, that, and of course, talking about Gary Webb, of course, everybody forgets his involvement with Iran-Contra, and, all that wonderful stuff, where...
Well, I'm sure he had everything to do with the assassination attempt on Reagan as well, let alone the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Yeah, see, I do believe that he had a whole lot to do with that shot that ended up in Reagan's almost killing him. I'm very sure of that.
One of his sons had dinner with the shooter the night before. Hello.
Yeah, that's true. That's
what
absolutely
else
true.
What need to know? Is that a coincidence? Quinky dink?
Well, in the random possibilities of chance on the planet, Maria, there may be.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, you got a better chance of getting Ebola.
Yeah, there you go. As far as Bush goes, I do object to the idea of putting him in Dealey Plaza, but as far as his involvement with the CIA and how he tried to deny that.
Absolutely. All of a sudden, there were two George Bushes working for the CIA. People really need to do the homework.
Yeah, and one guy was actually just this temporary file clerk that they, discarded really quickly, and he was, suddenly on the record or whatever, and it wasn't even an HW actually in his middle name and all that. But we could point to another George Bush who worked for the CIA.
Right. Listen, I was 13 years old when Kennedy was shot. Okay, I could describe that whole day to you and the days that followed. George Bush Sr. is the only man on the planet who doesn't remember where he was when Kennedy was shot.
Oh, well, okay. Richard Nixon didn't remember either.
Right. Well, they were all at a party with LBJ a few nights before. So it's an incredible thing that a man of his position and power, who had to be in at least his 40s at the time, or at least he looked it, to say, I don't know where I was. Come on. That's like asking anybody alive today, do you remember what you were doing when 9/11 happened? And if they said, I don't, then they must be in a coma.
Right. If you were walking upright and above the age of 5, I'm sure you remember exactly where you were. And that's the only sort of prerequisite I'll give to that one is, look, if you were a toddler at the time, you might not remember, or possibly if you had Alzheimer's, you might not remember. But other than that, yeah, everybody remembers exactly where they were, what they were doing on that day. And of course, the Kennedy assassination is something I'll be discussing next week. Because so happens I'll be on the air on the 22nd, and I'm actually going to flip the script and have somebody else interview me about it, so it ought to be interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But
good for you.
Because I did a lot of work on that, of course, and
well, you have a lot of people that'll say the same thing about the assassination as they'll ask about 9/11. It's in the past. Why do you still want to talk about it? Well, when Kennedy was killed, that's the last time we had any chance of an above-the-board actual elected, whether stolen elections or not, president. And our country was killed that day. And that's when the cabal behind the assassination, who I believe the same cabal was behind 9/11, were able to destroy our country.
Well, absolutely.
They never lost sight of their goals. You got to give them credit for that. They wait and they're patient to plot and plan.
Oh yeah, and that's a guarantee, and that's one of the points I try and make about that is that is the day that we lost control, any semblance of control that we may have had over the military-industrial complex, which has spawned all of these other poison apples from the poison tree, as if you will,
right.
Ever after. And
and it gave birth to the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters is a new term I've learned reading a book called The Money Mafia by Paul Hellyer, who was in the Canadian Parliament since I was born. And he talks about the birth of the people that truly control us, the unelected Bilderbergs, Trilaterals, and the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right, and this is them taking hold at that time. It's so obvious.
Now they've got it all.
Well, you got it, and this is why we're being slowly strangled to death financially in this country, regardless of what kind of crap they try and feed us about the recovery, as it were, right, Maria?
Right, what a recovery. The only people that recover were the 0.1%ers.
Right.
They own something like, 43% of all the wealth in this country. And, I just went for a coffee today, and I met this woman, and we started talking, and she was cleaning the table where I was. She's probably about 50. Really nice African-American woman. And I just started up a conversation with her because they just opened this new coffee shop and how she's doing. And she's telling me about how they cut her hours, how she's got to work 2 jobs just to barely get by. And she's representative of most Americans. And there's something wrong with that picture when you have no time to have a life.
Well, right, and this is the situation that a lot of us find ourselves in, is now having to compromise as opposed to seeking to improve our situations. There are financial the landscape of opportunity has shrunk. And it's one of those things that it's not sort of accountable by one sort of measuring stick here. There's not one yardstick for it. But the entire system is essentially contracted to the point where even though, the money seems to have gotten bigger, it's weird because somebody told me that essentially if you look at, the price of gold and silver and the way it's, changed and everything like that, that gold and silver still buys what it always did. It's just that the way you translate it to the dollars anymore is what's changed. It's a weird kind of
prices of the price of even minerals. Everything is manipulated.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. The whole game is rigged, and once you start applying value to it based on their system, you've already lost. Is what
and
the
it's
problem
not
is.
just. Let's not leave out. This isn't just happening here in the United States. The people in England right now are protesting because of the austerity there. They're saying their children will never do as well as their grandparents or their parents did. Unemployment in Europe amongst the young is like 25% and up. These kids have nothing to look forward to. So what are they going to do when this younger generation decides to revolt? Because they've got nothing to lose.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is I'm not sure. See, that's where I start to get a little confused because on one level, it seems as though the younger generation is evolving in a way, and I note just by talking to some younger people, by interacting with my own kids and seeing how their attitudes have changed regarding certain things like social issues. I mean, racism is not the same issue it was when I was a teenager.
Right.
Sexism is not the same issue it was when I was a teenager. It has definitely changed, and in my opinion, much for the better. There is a greater amount of actual true tolerance among them.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, they're intellectually not equipped in the same way that we would have been, because they no longer have to store their own knowledge. They no longer keep their own library of facts and textbooks and things like that. Everything is, ask your device for the answer. So they're no longer keeping their own personal store of knowledge in their own little brains, which worries me a great deal because, look, the moment that somebody decides to really manipulate and get their hands around, the internet and everything else, even more than they already have, all of that knowledge that might have been able to be gained by independent things, by adversarial sorts of views of history or current events, et cetera, the underground newspaper and everything else like that is just waiting to be quashed in the electronic age.
Well, don't you think it was all done deliberately, like everybody using their Kindles and whatnot and e-books? All they got to do is pull the plug and books are gone.
Oh,
okay, exactly. This to me is also part of the plan of these one world order minions. You hear all the time, when you talk about an EMP, okay, they don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen, okay? Well, when everybody's disconnected from their gadgets and they can't add 2 + 2, what happens then?
Well, yeah, right, and that's the thing. It's the dependence upon the larger system, which is the biggest problem, isn't it?
Absolutely. Listen, when I talk to people my age, okay, and I'm, in my 60s now, hard to believe, or anybody over 50, we all say the same thing. We fear for the future because we look at the younger generation and how dependent they are, and we all agree that life was better if the big trade-off from when I was growing up is the plus we have today in technology, the trade-off wasn't worth it.
Yeah, it seems that way to me as well. And I mean, I grew up a couple of decades later, but even so, it's the same thing though. It really has sort of devolved. I think the personal intellectual strength seems to be gone. Regarding
socialization too. Look at how isolated people are because of technology. They have friends only online. They don't even know what a real conversation with a human being is. And if they are having one, they're both on their gadgets.
Well, yeah, that's the other funny thing is you can actually observe some of these people that are, in their teens and in their 20s, sitting 5 feet from one another and actually texting back and forth. I mean, I know that sounds like I'm being the complaining old man here, but it's real.
It is real, and I find it very isolating, and I find it very rude. I mean, my grandchildren, they're grown up, they're 18 and almost 20. But they know when they come to visit me, that phone gets checked at the door. They're either visiting me or they're going to be on their gadget. There's no two ways to have it.
Right. And of course, but of course we come from times when people would tell you stuff like you have to look people in the eye and, actually watch what you say to someone.
Right. Imagine going out to dinner and actually having a conversation with the person you're having dinner with. Wow, what a concept.
Well, for those who can still afford to go out to dinner, because that costs a fortune anymore, and God help you if you go to the wrong place, and now they've added extra taxes to everything and everything else. It's out of control. Now, here's one last thing that I'm going to bring up because I got this funny feeling you're going to have something to say about this. But let's put these two things in context real quick, though. You see the ratcheting up of what's going on in the Ukraine, right? We've been playing this chess game back and forth with Putin, or at least that's the way it looks on the world stage. And then you put that in context with what's going on with the G20 right now. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that and like Obama's visit to China and sort of the global, stage as it's being played out in front of us? I mean, I feel like we're looking at an off-Broadway play that has really gone out of control here, and nobody has actually stepped forward and decided to take on the role of the villain because they all are, in fact.
Well, I don't know. I look at the world stage and I can't believe that for the past year that I actually have said out loud on my show that the president of Russia is making more sense than the president of the United States. And I think that, remember, you don't have the one world central bank in Russia. And you look at, we tried to get into Syria. Putin stopped us from doing that, so we had to develop ISIS as another excuse to get in. We always want to find our way in no matter what, even though he shamed us in front of the world. I'm not saying he's any saint, but it has been proven that Russia had nothing to do with the downing of that MH17. You look at the G20, actually, I just put up some posters of fabulous protests going on outside the G20. I mean, kids are laying down in the streets. It's fabulous. What it gives me the joy of knowing that my work for the past 20 years actually has made a difference because at least people know who the real enemies are. Where before they just, it's like complaining at the gas pump for the price of gas. Well, that's not going to change things. You got to complain where the complaint's going to do some good. But people seem to know now. There was one environmentalist, I don't remember his name, but he made a statement that you could apply to this too. He said, the people that are ruining the earth all have names and addresses. I don't think I need to add more to that statement.
No, this is true. We're starting to actually know who the players are. And this is part of what's being accomplished by actually doing this stuff, which is outside of the mainstream nonsense, where we are confronted by Kim Kardashian's ass for some reason, and
right,
and all
this things,
all these other useless things, yeah,
right. Well, celebrities' nude photos got broken into. Who cares? Okay, that's number one. Number two, if you don't want nude photos seen of you, don't take them. It's that simple. Okay, if you took them and they got out, oops. Okay, you took the pictures, all right? So now just, own up to it. But, we live in a society where the news is all about sensationalism and distraction. And people have to understand all the main media, all the mass media, which have very few viewers anymore. They're lucky if they get 1 million people to watch their news shows. Are all owned by the CIA and Pentagon. It's legal now. It's been legal since Donald Rumsfeld to put propaganda out to Americans in their news, and that's all you're getting.
Well, and for those...
To me, the flagship news story every day should be Fukushima. Why isn't the best people all over the world working together to try to find a solution for the China syndrome that's melting down every day? Millions of kids in Fukushima in Japan, those poor kids, they're done, okay? Thyroid cancers, 2 heads, stillbirths. Nobody wants to talk about that.
Well, just like nobody wants to talk about all of the nuclear contamination over the planet. I mean,
Look how many of our plants are leaking in the United States. People can just go to enenews.com and read about all the plants that are leaking radiation right here at home. That WIP plant in New Mexico, the radiation release was 7,000 times the norm this week. How many people know that?
You know what? I gotta tell you, unfortunately, I didn't know that until you told me.
Well, you need to listen to my show, Charles.
I don't catch all of the blasted news. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, for me, it's 24 hours a day looking for the stories they're not telling us. That's what, and when I get started delivering the news, even talking at New York speed, I can't fit it all in, usually, in less than an hour and a half. That's how much news I have. I just keep going till I've said every story I think my listeners have to know.
Okay.
But, people don't know that about New Mexico. They don't know about, the tremendous amount of thyroid cancer back east. Okay, people think Fukushima's only hit in California. Hello. The reindeer in the Netherlands are loaded with radioactivity. They can't figure out where it's coming from. How stupid are these experts? The world's a circle. Do the math, okay? What goes around comes around.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is look at the winds, and you'll see that this stuff is getting carried everywhere, and that speaks nothing of the ocean. It's in the wind,
it's in the soil. The animals are eating the plants out of the soil, which is radioactive. Hello. Of course the reindeer are now radioactive. In whatever country they actually eat reindeer, it's their main staple. And yet, when you see all these studies, the scientists are always bewildered. It's a mystery. The death in the Pacific alone is a mystery to them. Whales are getting pregnant, and the pregnancy ends with death. The babies aren't getting born. Gee, it's a mystery we don't understand. How big a mystery? I'm no scientist, okay? It's called Fukushima.
Well, and the scariest thing to me is that this brought to my attention the fact that if you look at where these power plants are built everywhere across the globe, they're all in very dangerous places to be. Fukushima could be nothing if we just have, like, say, one major coastal event in the United States.
You have that power plant in California that's built by the same people that brought you TEPCO. And people are picking up rocks there that they put them in their pockets, and their pockets catch fire. That plant needed to be shut down at least 10 years ago. It's also on an earthquake fault. That could be our Fukushima, but no one wants to talk about that either because it's not glamorous.
Well, right. And what other? Well, just out of curiosity, on the last time that you did the news, what was one of the big key stories that you wanted to make sure was covered?
Well, we had a very sweet hero die this week, Thomas Young. Are you familiar with him?
Off the top of my head, no. But I think if you tell me the story, I'll know who he is.
I will. Thomas Young was an Iraqi veteran. He then became a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. He was 34 years young, a play on his name, and he died from his injuries that he got in Bush's illegal war. And he wrote a letter to George W. and to Dick Cheney. And that kid's letter was off the charts with nothing but truth. And you know how he wasted his life on their war based on lies, how the two of them should be in jail, how many of his buddies he saw dead, the million Iraqis that are dead. I mean, this kid went on and on. And I was so impressed that I read the entire letter on my show Thursday. and he's a hero, okay? Remember, after 9/11, this young man, like so many young men, even my son was all ready to go join the service, okay? I got to go fight our enemies. He did what most young people in America did. They bought the official lie, and they wanted to go defend their country. And then, of course, once he found out the truth, it was a whole different story. I remember my son saying he was going to sign up, and I said to my son, "What?" I said, "You're not signing up for anything," I said to him. I said, "because I'll shoot you myself so you can be shot by somebody who loves you." I said, "You're not fighting any corporate war for Bush and Cheney." So he kind of lost that idea. But Thomas Young went, like all the young men that fight for their countries, they all believed the lies, like all the guys that fought in World War II. I mean, they were all duped. And Kissinger calls them all, cattle, dumb animals. But his letter was unbelievable. You should really Google it because it's worth reading and it's worth every one of your listeners hearing it. But they don't care. These are not their kids, okay? Our kids are cannon fodder for them. They don't even register as human to these people.
Right.
So I thought that was a huge story. I thought the women getting sterilized and in India was a big story. How many women have died by forced, sterilization. They pay them. They think that's population control.
Oh, and there was that doctor over there, right, who had done, what was it, like 80 of them in an hour or something like this?
Right, but you know what? They're still doing forced sterilizations in prisons here in America, in women's prisons. California got busted for that about 2 months ago. They tell me you're coming in for this type of surgery, and the next thing you know, wham, you're sterilized, which is an old thing in America. I mean, we've done it to we've experimented on our own people. You think about the Tuskegee Airmen, when they did those experiments on black members of the Air Force. Basically just killed them and wanted to see how long it would take for them to die. I mean, people really need to get a grip on reality. What you think your government is, according to your little school books that they wrote, is anything but what it is. They are not for, by, and of the people. Okay? That was a dream that maybe existed 200 years ago, but it's certainly nowhere close to the truth today.
Oh, right, and they continue to sell us these lies, and of course I do mark the real, World War II was definitely one of these false situations where we were brought in, and the bankers were, funding both sides. Of course, you can go look up a guy named Prescott Bush. There's that name again, Maria.
Right, Grandpa Bush. And nobody really knew that the Bush family supported the Nazis when they were getting elected. Those are stories that didn't come out until after they were both in office. And now we're going to look forward to Jeb Bush running for president? Please.
Well, look, if you lie to me once, shame on me. You lie to me twice.
You can put food on your family. I do miss all the digs I used to get on him. Those 8 years he gave me so much to rag on. It was like nonstop. It was like, what's the idiot doing now? And I'm sure comedians miss him too because he just was a wealth of material. One good news story this week, and I don't know if you would agree that it's good news, but I think it is.
Okay.
That they've decided, the food stamp program, SNAP, that if you use your food stamps for fruits and vegetables, they double your food stamps. I thought that was genius because people are always, I can't afford to eat healthy. Well, now they have no excuse. Okay, if they're actually buying real food, which fruits and vegetables are, instead of packaged crap, which of course is going to make you fat and sick the way they like you, that they would double your amount of SNAP, which I thought was a good thing.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna have this type of program, there's definitely a reason to encourage people. Of course, one of the problems is that even now things that appear to be fruits and vegetables aren't necessarily fruits and vegetables. So I think there's going to need to be more education regarding this stuff. I mean, I read this week about the new GMO potato, which has been approved.
Yeah.
And of course, who's going to get the bumper crop on that one?
McDonald's.
McDonald's.
It was invented by the same people that gave McDonald's their potatoes, their regular potatoes. And the reason, listen to this, the best part. I'm very sarcastic when I read those stories on my show because I can't help myself. The devil comes out. I said they want to tell you that they took something out of the potato to lessen the carcinogens that cause cancer when you eat the French fries. Okay, now anybody with even a half a brain can understand that what makes it carcinogenic is the fact that you're French frying it, okay? Imagine the disgusting low-grade quality of God knows what type of fat or oil that is that they're frying that in, okay? It's not the potato, okay? But they're not going to say it's the preparation of it. It would be like saying throw your barbecue grill out because the barbecued food's giving you cancer. So they're going to blame it on the potato. I mean, I can barely keep my sanity when I read stories like that. Everything to me is like an insult to my intelligence, and everybody listening should feel the same way. Anybody reading those stories should feel the same way.
See, and the way that I felt about it is when I saw it on the the mainstream websites like the Fox News and all that, was that they're absolutely trying to tell you that essentially, if you do the math here regarding that story, that McDonald's French fries will give you less cancer than the potatoes you make at home now. I think that's part of the point of that story. Isn't that?
Of course. First of all, there's very little nutrition in a white potato. Okay.
Right.
I happen to prefer sweet potatoes, okay? They're just better, all right? Second, if you want to shop and you want to know whether you're eating real food, this is the best barometer. Always buy organic. If you can't get organic, second is locally grown, okay? Today, most people's food travels more than they ever will in their lifetime. Never eat anything packaged or processed, okay? There's your second thing. When I go to the store, it's so easy for me. All I have to do is hit the produce department and leave, okay? My friends are like, who gets to the supermarket in and out like you do? I don't even go down those aisles. You want to shop the outer aisles of the store where real food might actually still exist. I believe the code for organic starts with the number 9. You can look that up. Every now and then I do throw the poster, up for that, so you know what those numbers on those little stickers mean. You can also tell what country that stuff comes from. And a lot of people started boycotting Israeli products, and they listed the numbers that would be on that food. Don't buy food in Walmart, okay? Most of their food, even their organics, is coming from China. China has no organic standard. It's one big, filthy, disgusting, polluted place. Well, so if you want to save money, and eat healthier, go for local organic fruits and vegetables, whole grains, which is what the human body is supposed to be eating, and skip the rest because the whole food system is set up to make you sick and fat, so the people that own the food companies can make money on you on the other end because they also own big pharmaceutical companies and all the diet centers. That's why Kevin Trudeau is rotting in jail, because his last book, exposed that.
Well, but that's all just a big coincidence, right, Maria? I mean, the big companies.
Yes, I had breakfast with Kevin. Actually, when David Icke came to town, I had opened up for David when he was at one of the theaters here. I actually did 25 minutes of stand-up comedy for him. And the next morning I had breakfast with him, with Jack Blood, with Kevin Trudeau. I mean, it was quite the breakfast table. There's probably pictures of it online still. And when I looked at Kevin, I don't think I've ever seen a man that looked as healthy as he did. I mean, that man glowed. He literally glowed. I never saw anything like it. And I said, Kevin, you're in the line of fire because no matter how you look at it, you're doing God's work, okay? And I don't mean that in a religious way. And he says, yeah, but that's okay. I have enough money to fight them. Well, obviously he ran out of enough money, and they gave him 10 years because his book said a specific diet was easy when it wasn't easy. He got 10 years over a book. When you have everybody on TV selling you all these quack diets like Dr. Oz, who got busted just a month ago, and yet he's still on TV. He's not going to do 10 years for pushing snake oil diets.
Well, and isn't that part of the game too? Their people never seem to get in trouble. You're just fine if you take their drugs, but
exactly.
God help you if you want to, smoke a plant or utilize it for medicine,
Right, ooh, but hey, let's radiate every living healthy cell in your body and poison it with chemotherapy and see if you live through it.
Yeah, because after all, drinking a little bit of hemp oil or consuming, an edible hemp product might actually turn you into a massive criminal. And I've never actually known a pothead to be a really violent person in my own life, but
listen, I've lived a lot longer than you, and pot's been around forever. Okay, never once have I ever seen anybody violent on pot. And very rarely have I not seen somebody super violent when they're drinking, okay? But alcohol is legal. My advice to people is if it comes from a plant, use it. If it's made in a plant, avoid it.
Mm-hmm. And you can't see again. You boil it right down to its essence, and there you go. So,
look, life is simple. You figure it out when you get older. You say, "Wow, all the things I worried about, I sweat over when I was younger. This and that. None of it really made a hill of beans. It doesn't matter. Look how easy life can be." And I can honestly tell you that it's really good getting older. Okay, that's another program they wanted us to buy into. That you're supposed to get old a certain way. You're supposed to be sick, you're supposed to have arthritis, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. I broke all those rules.
Well, right. I mean, at your age, and I'm not making any disparaging remark, that, but at your age to be as active, coherent, and absolutely wonderful, intellectually as you are, it's a wonderful testament to what happens when you don't listen to all of the garbage that's out there.
Absolutely. Listen, my gym, I go to the gym 6 days a week. Last week, my gym wanted to do a photo shoot of me and put me up on their page, okay, just to show people what my 65 looks like and how inspiring and motivational I am to those people. And if you dig into my Facebook page, you might still find it. God knows I put so much shit up there, it'll take forever scrolling. But, to me, these people look at me and they're like, how is it even possible? I took my granddaughter with me to the gym, and one of the old guys there said to her, "You can't ask for somebody better to show you around the gym than your grandmother. She can burn through any man here." Okay, but why is that? I eat organic vegetarian. I drink clean water, triple filtered, okay? I sleep well at night. My mind is busy, and I'm proactive, okay? You don't have to buy, remember we started the show off with the roles people are supposed to play.
Yep.
All right, I wanted to prove that just because you're over 60 doesn't mean you have to get old, and your body doesn't have to go down, and I have accomplished that. The only thing I'm looking forward to is what's my goal going to be for 70? I have to come up with something new now, okay?
Well, you've already been an artist. You've already been a broadcaster, a news person, a journalist, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating figures really outside of the mainstream, that anybody could look into. And I advise everybody to go and visit Meria.net and take a look at that front page at the very least. Find her on Facebook. Find her everywhere you can because she is absolutely wonderful and one of the people that I count as an inspiration to me personally. So I know she might not want to take credit for that, but
a lot of people have accused you of being my son, but maybe from another lifetime.
It seems that way. It does seem, although we are both actually Italian, so it is. You never know. We might be related.
What they say, there's only two types of people in the world: people that are Italian and people that wish they were.
There you go. And, I make reference to that once in a while. People shake their heads because there's not actually that many Italians in the alternative stream, it seems.
Well, let alone an Italian woman from Brooklyn, New York, okay?
Yeah.
Has a great sense of humor. You just never know where your life's going to end up. And my motto through life is, once I succeed at something, I want to do something else. Right. Now I'm at that point where I just say out loud, show me the door, I'll walk through it.
You got it. And actually, really quick, too, I forgot to mention this earlier. Meria was actually the person who put me in touch with Joseph Anthony. When I had him on the show, I know that was an interesting show we did. And what's that?
Another Paisan, Joe Anthony.
You got it.
I can make that poor guy talk so fast on my show to squeeze in that astrology show in an hour once a month. I always ask him, Joe, how's your wrist? Is your wrist hurt yet? And he goes, no, I practice. My hands are moving all the time. I'm good.
And he's definitely an interesting guy out there, and one of those people that definitely he's got his own website. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Do you know?
Planetswithin.com.
Say that again, because I kind of cut you off.
Planetswithin.com.
That's it.
And you'll never find an astrologer that says hep to the one world order and what's going on the planet like Joe. Okay, that's what makes him different than every other astrologer, any other person in the metaphysical world. They just pay attention to their spiritual stuff and have no clue what's going on in the world. I want people that know everything on my show.
Right. Well, and of course you made that exception when you had me on your show, so it's okay.
Well, I thought you were pretty smart for a young guy. I was like, yay, okay, let's get Chuck on the show.
Yeah, well, it's some of my listeners definitely disagree with you, but it's okay.
Hey, you know what? They can try doing what we do too. When I first started, I don't think there were more than 4 or 5 people in the world doing a podcast. We didn't even call it a podcast. It was called a webcast.
This is true.
Thousands of people have picked up that scepter since. So if I inspired, any of them, I'm glad to have done it. I don't see them as competition. I just see them as a result of the hard work that I've put in.
Well, exactly, and the greatest thing about that is that some people tell me that it's kind of bad because there's so many of us out there now. There's 100,000 of us with 5 listeners apiece. Wouldn't it be better if there was 5 of us with 100,000 listeners apiece, something like that? And I disagree completely because I see it as the raindrops which are falling in the ocean, and that is what is actually going to change the tide in this world. Is that if enough of us begin to speak out from whatever platform it is we can seize upon, I think that that this will be the way that we'll be able to shift the consciousness for the better, and we are succeeding. I do believe we are succeeding.
Absolutely. Remember this: it doesn't matter how many people are listening. Everybody has their own audience. Okay, people that listen to you might find my way of speaking abrasive, so they might want to listen to you or to Jack or to somebody else. The thing is, as long as they're getting the education, what does it really matter? It's not a competition, never was. Although I will tell you, my mother told me when they made me, they broke the mold, and I don't think my mother lied to me, so I want to say I'm one of a kind.
Well, absolutely, and a weird question from Skype, a Skype message, and I'll answer this for Meria. No, Meria is not Lynn Samuels, no.
I don't even know who Lynn Samuels is.
Oh, Lynn Samuels. I see, and I know Tim. You are from the New York area, so I know that you heard Lynn Samuels on WABC radio in New York. Okay. No, Meria is not Lynn Samuels.
Years ago, he might have heard me on WALE out of Rhode Island and New York, but that was 17 years ago.
There you go. See, now that's maybe you're confusing the two voices, but Lynn was like the token leftist on WABC for a while. You're familiar with ABC radio the way it was, say, about 20 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah, but I really didn't pay much attention to it. I still don't. Yeah, I try not to listen to as much of the freaks on mass media as I can because I don't want them coloring my own intuition and my own deciphering of the news. I trust my intuition when I'm reading a story, and I look for what they're not telling us because I know that's what the story is, the part they're not telling us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am somebody who has been kind of a connoisseur of talk radio over the years, and definitely I did pay attention to some of that stuff. I used to find, actually, now here's a blast from the past for you. You remember Curtis Sliwa?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Once I say this, you'll know who I'm talking about. Guardian Angel, Curtis Sliwa.
Guardian Angel? You mean the guy that used to ride the subways with his hat?
You got it, with the red beret, right?
Oh. Yeah, I remember that.
He was...
what a freak show the New York subways are.
Oh, man. And back then, of course, post-Bernie Getz, for everybody who forgets, it actually got worse. So there was this civilian patrol that was developed for those outside of the New York area for the subway systems mainly, called the Guardian Angels. And the head Guardian Angel for quite a while then turned himself into a talk show host, et cetera, was Curtis Sliwa. That was his name. He was one of the broadcasters on WABC as well. Along with, the Rush Limbaugh and the Rush Limbaugh wannabes out there, et cetera, et cetera.
You got some guys that are criminals with criminal past that have the biggest radio shows out there, and then two that pop out in my head right away is Oliver North and Joe Scarborough. If I was Joe Scarborough, I would have zipped my lip and went into hiding a long time ago when they found that dead intern, Laurie Clisaudis, dead on his desk in his office. But there's a story that went away. You look at these criminals and now they're all movie, big stars. And I'm like, oh my God. And people are listening to these people. Ollie North, let's not forget him in Iran-Contra.
Oh, yeah, of course. And now he's, a Fox contributor still, I think.
Right. I remember one thing he said that he exposed about Bush Sr. During that whole scandal. He said that the only thing that kept Bush Sr. from declaring martial law during those times was the fact that he knew Americans were so heavily armed.
Yeah, well, and then, of course, he got bought off or scared off or whatever, and he never made another statement like that again.
Of course not. Of course not. That happens to, a lot of them. Look at Vince Bugliosi, okay?
Oh,
He had a great book on the stolen election. And I had interviewed him on it, and it was fabulous. And then the next thing he comes out with was that bogus crap book he wrote about the Kennedy assassination. So I was like, wow, who paid him off?
Yeah, which is hands down the worst volume ever produced on the assassination. Absolutely disgusting. It actually has made me question in later years as to whether, Charles Manson was really guilty or not, considering the way that he handled that prosecutorial brief for 2,000 pages. You know.
Well, there's the other, I got to tell you, nobody has it covered better than Dave McGowan in his book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. Because Charles Manson is throughout that. And when you find out that all those 60s groups and singers that we all adored all came from military families, military backgrounds, it changes your whole view even of the 60s music. I mean, we've got nothing but mind control for so many years that it's an amazing thing how any of us can think straight. But you want to read about Charles Manson, read Dave McGowan's latest book, which is smoking hot about what came out of Laurel Canyon.
Oh, yeah. What is the name of that book?
It's called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, which now, all of a sudden, a lot of these new young rock and pop and whatever they call their music today are moving back into the canyon again and making music out of there.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can keep your mind control all in one pocket if you like, Yeah,
but I mean, Dave took a lot of flack for what he exposed in that book, but I'll tell you what, people love it.
Well, yeah, and let's not forget a little bit more about Vince Bugliosi's past. And yes, I did use the G because I like to do that. It annoys the hell out of him. The thing is that Bugliosi used, when he was a prosecutor in Los Angeles, was actually on the side of getting the RFK case reopened regarding that whole situation. This guy was talking about, the possibility of conspiracy and conspiracy theory and so on and so forth, actually comparing, the RFK case to a marijuana joint case and all this other stuff, and making a whole lot of heavy statements about it, wanting to get that reopened. But at the same time, this is the same guy who, spends 500-600 pages stages taking cheap shots and character assassination shots at anybody who was researching the Kennedy assassination. And,
we're going to hear nothing but the official story on this 50th anniversary. Nothing but the same reiterating of the same old lies, the lone gunman, Lee Harvey did it, the magic bullet. We're going to hear the same crap. It's like they have to keep repeating the lie to keep people believing it. And yet I think the latest statistic is 80% of Americans don't believe the Kennedy assassination story.
Right. We actually just passed the 50th anniversary in September of the Warren Commission report being released to the public. And last year during the 50th anniversary of the assassination of itself, this was definitely on the table. There was a big push from those, owned by only 6 corporations, soon to be 5, media outlets to still continue to support it. And if you look back historically, you could find that CBS was in the midst of a 2-hour broadcast at the time that it was actually, the report itself was actually issued to the public in the beginning anyway, doing nothing but touting exactly how great and wonderful the former head of the CIA, Allen Dulles, who had been fired by Kennedy, the FBI stooge, who you find out later, exactly what his true colors are, Gerald Ford. These are your Warren commissioners, people. John J. McCloy, the former Grand Chancellor of post-World War II Germany, who was responsible for changing the death sentences on a whole lot of Nuremberg criminals. Okay, these are the people that brought you the Warren Commission, along with a couple of Southern senators who hated Kennedy's guts as well.
Right, it was just as full of crap as the 9/11 Commission report. Listen, they have an MO that works, and they never even change it.
Oh, well,
it's official, so everybody's going to believe it.
See, in all fairness, though, with the Warren Commission report, they released 26 volumes. With the 9/11 Commission report, they just gave us the one. So,
Right. So in case you can't sleep at night, that'll certainly put you into the snore zone.
Oh, yeah, or the comic book version, if you like. That was released, too. You remember that?
Right. But if you look at it, in the 9/11 Commission, or as David Ray Griffin wrote his book, the 9/11 Omissions Report, they didn't even mention Building 7 except for a footnote. And it's just the same old story. And, when people say, why do you still cover 9/11? I said, because we're living in a post-apocalyptic 9/11 America. If 9/11 didn't happen, we wouldn't be living in a police state right now.
Well, right, because it's the excuse to clamp down on all of our liberties. It's the excuse for, the Patriot Act 1 and 2, the NDAA. It's the excuse for us to involve ourselves in places like, Iran, Iraq. Well, excuse me, I misspoke when I said Iran, but stay tuned.
That's on the list.
Yeah, of course it is. Syria, the whole thing that's going on over there, the continuous, extraction and reintroduction of troops into Iraq, so on and so forth. All of this stuff stems from that particular trauma-based programming day in our history. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. Look, Bush himself said he felt like he hit the trifecta after 9/11. And he did. Make no mistake about it. He rolled in the Patriot Act. He got the war against Hussein, who was bad to his father. The recount, which people forget, the recount that was supposed to be announced on September 12th in Florida was never announced. Everybody had to rally around the president.
Oh, yeah.
So the stolen election was solidified then.
Oh,
and let's not forget, like Ferguson, FEMA was already in New York on September 10th.
Oh,
so,
exactly.
They're already getting the National Guard ready for Ferguson, and we don't even have any idea yet whether this guy's going to be indicted or not. But they're already ready, okay? They're always on the ready.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not leave out the $3 trillion that Rumsfeld said was missing from the Pentagon. I think he announced that on the 10th, too.
That's what I was going to go to. That's what I kept chomping at.
Bingo. Right, bingo.
Gee, and there you go, folks. There's your trifecta, actually.
Bingo. I always say it, and I made it up, and I'm sure people have repeated it because I've said it for so many years. 9/11 happened, and we all got convicted.
Absolutely, and I agree with you there. We have all been convicted and prosecuted and over time sent to those wonderful enhanced interrogations, et cetera, in one way or another.
The ugliness is so deep in what has happened to this country that it's hard for me to realize all of this has happened just in my one lifetime. It didn't take 100 years, okay? It took 50.
Well, yeah, and I contend that it was even less than that because it really occurred, I think, during my lifetime, which has been less than 50 years. And it is a completely different place and time than I ever imagined, because when I grew up, there was that concept of the American ideal, the American dream, I'm holding up air quotes, and all that good stuff. And, of course, that is all dead and gone. Listen, we only have...
If people read other countries' newspapers and how they view the United States, I think they would be shocked.
Well, yeah, and I mean, legitimate sentiment, regardless of what we've manufactured, via the IS narratives and everything else, there is legitimate backlash against us because we are now the American empire, which utilizes our military might, in more countries on this planet than you can even count at this point. I think it's up to 190 some odd countries in the world where there's only, 200 and some odd that exist, where we have a military presence and all that kind of stuff. But of course, I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist, and I'm calling it the American Empire because I'm just not a good patriotic citizen anymore, am I?
Patriot does exactly what we're doing, Charles.
Precisely.
I had a scholar on my show who wrote a fabulous book of Thomas Jefferson quotes. He put all his quotes in different chapters. It was excellent. And he gave me the biggest compliment I've ever gotten. He said, Meria, what you're doing is very Jeffersonian in nature. He said, if Thomas Jefferson was alive today, he'd probably be doing exactly what you are.
And that's just, I wouldn't know what to say if somebody said that to me. I wowould not know.
I was blown away. That was a big honor for me because, I was a very big fan of Thomas Jefferson. He had his quirks like everybody else, but he was so intelligent, so metaphysically intelligent, that we'll never see a president like that again with that kind of brain. It's just never going to happen.
Absolutely, and we're just about out of time, Meria. I want to thank you for coming on with me tonight. 2 hours flies by, doesn't it?
Time flies when you're having fun.
And it really, I can't stress enough to anybody listening that you need to go to Meria.net and check out what Maria's doing. She is just, I don't even have words to tell you exactly how diverse and how textured and really in depth. I mean, we barely scratched the surface about the kind of stuff that Meria talks about and she covers on her various webcasts.
All right, and let's not forget that's spelled Meria.
That's right, Meria, and of course that last name is Heller, which of course, as I said, this is the part 3 of the Hell show because both of us seem to have that particular word in our last names for some reason. Another coincidence.
I married it, and yet I said I put the hell in Heller for sure.
You got it. The mouth that roars, everybody. And I want to thank all the people that tuned in tonight. Anybody who was trying to call in, I didn't get to too many calls. I took Jimmy, and I had a dropped call, and just really got lost in conversation with Meria. So sorry about that. If I missed anybody's questions on Skype or whatever else, sorry. Also, I get kind of lost in conversation and shut my eyes and have to listen to this woman, and I hope all of you out there will do the same. So,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Meria, anytime. And I'm telling you, if you ever want a platform where you want to go on somebody else's show and you need to make a statement, I am definitely here for you. So,
alrighty.
So don't forget about that. And of course, one of these days we'll get into an in-depth conversation about why it is that it's possible that Meria was my mom in another life. We will do that.
Okay.
Because I think that may be valid, ladies and gentlemen. I really do.
Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Oh, thank you, Maria. See, now I've just gotten just about the Jeffersonian compliment, so what else can we say? I know that my obnoxious bumper is just about to kick in. So good night, everybody, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you for coming to UCY.tv and checking out the Ochelli Effect. It is all done for Saturday night, and next week on this program, we will be covering the JFK assassination. I'm sure that's a big surprise to anybody who listens to me, whether you hate me or not. But yeah, it will be the 22nd, so I think it's appropriate to actually go into it. But again, a real privilege to have Maria on tonight, and I hope all of you guys learn a little something, or at least got a new thought in your minds, because Maria is definitely one of those people that changed my way of thinking regarding a whole lot of issues. So that's that. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you in a minute, Kim. Bye.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, pistols and fondle slab of choice, and the internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have just real.